personal project for me. I'm a fiction writer by trade, so I write short stories, and I have a novel coming out next year, my first novel. But I also write nonfiction, and I was actually asked if I would consider writing a book about the explosion of Japanese pop culture in the United States, the sudden interest and surge of interest. And the reason why it struck a personal chord is that my mother is Japanese, and my father's American. So I've grown up as what Japanese people often refer to as a hafu, or a half. And when I was growing up, when I was a teenager certainly, Japan was not really considered cool. Some of you might be old enough to remember that in the 1980s in particular, Japan was rising as an economic power and was even considered by a lot of Americans as a threatening country. And so on the one hand, you would see on your television American auto workers and politicians, actually, in suits and ties, smashing Japanese cars on TV out of protest, these anti-Japan protests. They would smash Datsuns, Nissans, and Toyotas.
Was that in Detroit?
Well, it happened in Detroit in particular, yes, but other places also outside of Detroit. And you could actually see bumper stickers at that time with the universal non-smoking, don't do this, don't do that, the circle with the slash through it, and inside it was the rising sun, the Japanese flag. So it was like anti-Japan. It was really quite open, and to many Japanese who remember it, quite hurtful that this would happen. And so I kind of grew up in that climate. So for example, if a friend of mine on the playground or wherever I happened to be, found out that my mother was Japanese, the first response was often something like, ooh, so Roland, do you eat raw fish? Right? And the picture I had in my head was of like holding a fish from like the tail to the head, like corn on the cob, and just like attacking it, going at the scales with your teeth and stuff. That was what I imagined they meant, oh my God, do I eat raw fish? But of course I did eat sushi. But at that time, sushi was not popular in America. It was considered kind of a gross, exotic food. And now, 20 years later, of course, you can find sushi, takeout sushi, in just about every grocery store around the United States. And for me, and particularly for my mother, to see American shoppers putting into their grocery bags a roast chicken, and a corn on the cob, again, the lettuce and so on, and then grab a plastic container of sushi and Japanese rolls, maki, and then head for the checkout lane is an astonishing sight. It's really quite an extraordinary thing if you remember when Japan was anything but cool. In fact, Japan was often looked down upon negatively, the stereotypes. So when I started to consider writing this book and began to research what was happening, I was pretty amazed by what I was finding. On the one hand, so many friends of mine who have children of their own have a DVD copy of Totoro by Hayao Miyazaki sitting in their treasured DVD shelves, or other Miyazaki films, Spirited Away, and so on. I would start to see Japanese fashion, street fashion, showing up in American magazines like New York or Vogue. I would start to see these kind of animated bands. Some of you may know Gorillaz, the band from the UK, and they're actually modeled on the idea of an animated pop band, which was being done in Japan back in the 1980s. Some of you even know it's gotten kind of grotesque. There's a show on ABC called I Survived a Japanese Game Show. So it's almost gone too far, maybe some would say, in the direction of trying to embrace what's considered an eccentric and colorfully creative culture many thousands of miles away from here. So when I realized that there actually was this interest in Japanese culture and that the image of Japan had changed in the